This is another multi-purpose scene. First, Alex is visibly shaken, which once again humanizes her. But she also states the player's goal for the second half of the game: climb to the surface and get to the train station.
Careful, I hear turrets. They've been here so long, they're out of bullets.
This is another multi-purpose scene. First, Alex is visibly shaken, which once again humanizes.
Careful, I hear turrets. They've been here so long, they're out of bullets. I can't see a thing. I'm blind as a bat without that flashlight on. Damn, it's got a powered lock. How are we gonna get this open? Let's see if we can find it. We need to get through that
Before we armed players with traditional weapons, we wanted to give them a chance to appreciate Alex's combat abilities. Toward that goal, we created a very specific combat style for the early parts of the journey outside the Citadel. Dark, tense, surrounded by zombies, and either weaponless or starved for ammo, so that players needed to rely on the gravity gun, and more importantly, Alex. This is where players finally get a weapon. Since the door only opens when the padlock is shot, players can't proceed without finding the pistol. It's effectively a weapon gate. Once players are through the door, we can be sure they've got a pistol.
Hey, and you found a gun!
Originally, the player couldn't operate the power boxes, and would have to wait for Alex to do it. We thought it'd be entertaining to watch Alex do some cool thing while you protected her. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Playtesters were more annoyed than entertained. The other problem was that having Alex committed to a particular activity while action was still going on in the world tended to quickly expose her most robotic tendencies. She'd either ignore what was going on, or completely stop whatever activity the player was waiting for her to finish. Either way, it was unconvincing and frustrating. What we learned here was that whenever Alex commits to some action in a dynamic environment, she needs to finish it quickly and move on.
Initially, the player wasn't going to have a weapon here. The combination of no weapon and near total darkness forced the player to use the flashlight to direct Alex's fire. We liked the idea that you could interact with Alex in a meaningful way, using elements that were already built into the interface. Unfortunately, playtesters didn't like not having a weapon, so we added weapons back in. Luckily, it turned out that, even armed, players tended to still use and enjoy the flashlight mechanic.
The darkness in this area has a few real gameplay benefits. It slows the player down, which most of the time keeps Alex at your side. The claustrophobia, the close-in combat, and Alex's constant presence and reliance on your flashlight help enhance the tension and your sense of camaraderie. In the dark, the limited flashlight battery adds an extra layer of resource management to the tactics of combat.
If you don't like Alex,
found a
you're not going to have
troop
much
train.
fun with episode 1, so Alex being likable was one of our most crucial design goals.
What the hell is
Little
that?
moments like the Zombine joke are designed to make Alex more endearing.
Combine zombie.
Since we like to multitask, it also had the practical
That's
purpose
like
of introducing a new monster.
a
The
zombie,
success of the scene relied on a
right?
combination of dialogue, voice acting,
Zombie,
and
get it?
animation. Surprisingly, lighting was really important too. Under red light, Alex's self-deprecating groan looked more like she was sneering at the player for not getting the joke. Changing the lighting to blue
Crap.
and then adjusting the direction of
out!
the light
It's
so that
got a
it changed the
grenade!
shadows on her face fixed the problem.
It's important that monsters get very deliberate introductions, since players are going to interact with them a lot. Generally, we let the player first see a new monster in a safe environment, so they can start thinking about it before they have to fight it.
The soundtrack here was created for the introduction of a new adversary, the Combine Zombie, or Zombine. Discordant guitar tones and bends, and a lo-fi fast beat work in the background of this encounter to create an off-balance and disturbing mood.
For episode 1, we implemented a scripting component called the Response Rules System for dynamically managing NPC speech. We wanted to take NPC speech out of the hands of the programmers and let the writers control it. The writers were able to set up a wide range of situationally triggered character responses. For instance, Alex has different reactions to different enemies, can warn the player of danger, calls for help when she's mobbed, and will ask for light. The combat responses worked out great, but it's especially satisfying when Alex's comments on some situation mirror your own thoughts. The writers really went crazy with this, so be on the lookout for lots of little Easter egg responses to unusual situations.
We always try to exploit a feature as much as possible throughout a game. For instance, these flares. They're an exploration reward, they've got a simple, satisfying interaction with the gravity gun, and they're a good tactical alternative to the flashlight. Finally, they're a weapon that will ignite zombies, which, in turn, become a new light source.
Shine your light on that barnacle.
Poison headcrabs are ideal for ambushes, because they startle you but can't actually kill you. Here, after a series of right-hand turns, you round a corner into a dead end. While you're cracking open a box of goodies, you're ambushed by poison headcrab. Constructing the ambush this way increased the odds that you wouldn't see the crab, but you would hear it just in time to turn around as it leapt at your head.
Uh-oh, the antlions are coming up here. I can get a better shot if you knock them over, Gordon. Good idea, Gordon. Wow, I wouldn't have thought you could plug up the burrow that way.
The antlion hole training is unusual because it requires the player to learn a new skill in combat. This is a rare case where training occurs under duress, so Alex states the problem and helps in the fight without giving away the solution.
Hate these things.
You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing physical contact with her enemies. We'd always wanted to do this kind of dynamic character interactions, but getting the NPCs into position for their interactions has a pretty wide-ranging set of problems. So we ended up taking an opportunistic approach for Episode 1, where instead of figuring out how to maneuver characters into proximity, the system monitors their positions and fires the appropriate animations whenever it notices that they're correctly aligned. Given how well these interactions worked out between Alex and zombies, headcrabs and antlions, we're really looking forward to extending this kind of behavior to all of our NPCs.
Let's keep going.
This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow training pays off. Because we've taught the player the burrow blocking mechanic earlier in a less hectic environment, the problem here becomes not what to do with the burrows, but where to find the cars to block them while fighting off a horde of antlions. The burrows themselves went through several iterations. At first, playtesters had a hard time seeing them, and once they'd push the car onto one, they often weren't sure if the hole was actually sealed. We eventually solved both of these problems by adding a particle effect to the burrows. This effect makes them recognizable even at a distance, and its absence is a clear indication that the burrow is blocked.
We generally design and prototype the basic gameplay in a level before we apply much art to it. Throughout the first several months of playtesting this garage map, the geometry was nothing more than basic shapes and textures. After we finalized most of the gameplay elements, we began to flesh out the visuals for the area. For this level, we left the office and took reference pictures of various garages. From these shots, we pulled out everything we liked and that we thought we could pull off well. We combined these visual highlights into what we call a style guide map, which is a standalone map with no gameplay that we use strictly as visual reference. For this level, we actually made 2 style guides, one a destroyed garage, the other intact. After the look was established, we brought the playable map's visual quality up to the level of the style guides. Often a map's geometry needs to be changed as the art goes in because areas that worked in the abstract version no longer make sense in a map that now looks like a real place. For instance, the side rooms where 2 of the cars are hidden were moved several times in order to make them feel more naturally part of the parking garage.
That's the last burrow. Now we just gotta mop up this track. That's better. I can hear myself think. You're lucky you've got that hazard suit. This water's nasty. That room container there? Please let there be a way to the surface.
Episode 1 is our first project to use HDR lighting heavily in dark indoor environments. The interaction between the flashlight and the auto exposure calculations done for HDR presented a real technical challenge. In dark areas where the flashlight was the only source of illumination, we found that we'd often end up with grossly overexposed views. We ended up compensating for this by using a different set of exposure parameters when the flashlight was turned on. In particular, we drastically shrunk the region of the screen examined for exposure calculations, which permitted us to concentrate only on the much smaller area lit by the flashlight.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes while you waited for the elevator to arrive. The first iteration of this battle was very different from what we eventually
I would have
shipped.
settled for stairs.
The space was larger, had water in it, and wasn't completely dark. Water is relatively expensive performance-wise, so we cut that in favor of more zombies. We made the level smaller to ensure that the player would see the elevator and recognize the problem that needed to be solved before the fight started. We killed the lights both to enhance tension and to make the scene a final test of the dark fighting skills that the player develops over the course of the episode. Finally, we added a wire running along the ceiling from the elevator to the power box to give players a guide as they familiarize themselves with the area.
Keep your light on it. It's got a grenade. Great shooting.
In early versions of the episode, Alex was much more vocal about about giving the player hints. However, playtest showed it was much more satisfying for the players when Alex stated a goal and then stepped aside until that goal was accomplished. Because of that feedback, almost all of Alex's hint lines were cut. Eventually, though, we discovered through more playtesting that although players didn't like having Alex hand them unsolicited hints, they did want to be able to explicitly request help from her. So we added some of the hint dialogue back in, but it's only accessible at the player's request by Plus using Alex. Unfortunately, we learned these hint lessons late in the development cycle and didn't have time to properly train players for this feature. We plan to integrate the hint on demand dialogue more thoroughly in future episodes.
Shine your light on that thing.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes while you waited for the elevator to arrive. The first iteration of this battle was very different from what we eventually shipped. The space was larger, had water in it, and wasn't completely dark.
Our art and gameplay standards encourage players to build a visual dictionary that defines how they expect things to work in the Half-Life world. For instance, even though the door to the power box room is metal, and would probably have a metal crossbar holding it shut, we barred it with a wooden plank. Because we've been consistent throughout the game, the player should recognize that a wooden plank can be both broken and manipulated with a gravity gun, properties that wouldn't be immediately apparent about a metal bar.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes while you waited for the elevator to arrive. The first iteration of this battle was very different from what we eventually shipped. The space was larger, had water in it, and wasn't completely dark. Water is relatively expensive performance-wise, so we cut that in favor of more zombies. We made the level smaller to ensure that the player would see the elevator and recognize the problem that needed to be solved before the fight started. We killed the lights both in hand.
We're really happy with the zombies community. It adds sudden danger spikes to the zombie horde, which force players to quickly reprioritize the target. And since the player can grab a grenade out of the zombie center with a gravity gun, these danger spikes can be converted into offensive opportunities. This kind of turnaround skill shot creates some dynamic, satisfying hero moments for the player. Originally, we didn't allow the player to snipe zombie grenades because the spell is broke the friction of the gravity. Players who grab a zombie grenade, why couldn't they grab the combine soldier's guns? After playtesting the grenade steal though, fun went out over consistency.
Let's get out of here. That was close. It's still light out. Thank God, it's still day. Let's get out of here. Oh God, no. No, it's locked. I can't believe it. Can you see any way to get this open? That's it. See if the crank still works. Gordon, crank that thing. Great. Okay, let's get to the train yard before the Citadel blows.
This City 17 vista is an explicit visual reward for surviving the elevator battle. Since early playtesters told us that we weren't communicating just how damaged the city was, this sweeping view of an extremely messed up City 17 serves a practical purpose, as well as being a nice moment of calm between storms. The framing of your first view of the Citadel in this vista space is very deliberate. We included various leading elements, such as wires and light poles, that all drive the player's eye to the Citadel.
Later in the level, there's a Combine gunner protected behind some metal plates, just like the ones blocking the player's way here. We placed them here as a training tool to remind players that the gravity gun can grab and detach these things.
They're looking for something. Probably us.
Repelling soldiers presented a difficult training problem because we found it's tough to focus the player's attention upward. This entire alley was carefully designed to ensure that the player would see the descending soldiers. First, we framed the soldiers with a straight line of buildings. Then we had them run across the rooftops so they were starkly silhouetted against the sky before they dropped down in front of the lightly colored buildings. Finally, we added a distinctive sound to the repelling action so that the players would recognize it later in the game.
From the rooftops.
This City 17 vista is an explicit visual reward for surviving the elevator battle. Since early playtesters told us that we weren't communicating just how damaged the city was, this sweeping view of an extremely messed up City 17 serves a practical purpose, as well as being a nice moment of calm between storms. The framing of your first view of the Citadel in this vista space is very deliberate. We included various leading elements, such as wires and light poles, that all drive the player's eye to the Citadel.
Later in the level, there's a Combine gunner protected behind some metal plates, just like the ones blocking the player's way here. We placed them here as a training tool to remind players that the gravity gun can grab and detach these things.
They're looking for something. Probably us. From the rooftops. Before they notice us again.
Repelling soldiers presented a difficult training problem because we found it's tough to focus the player's attention upward. This entire alley was carefully designed to ensure that the player would see the descending soldiers. First, we framed the soldiers with a straight line of buildings. Then we had them run across the rooftops so they were starkly silhouetted against the sky before they dropped down in front of the lightly colored buildings. Finally, we added a distinctive sound to the repelling action so that the players would recognize it later in the game.
Trip mine traps are great, but they were
I'll
sort of
cover
hard
the
to
street while you
justify
figure
given the
this
total
out.
chaos of City 17. Even though we couldn't use trip mines a lot, they made sense in this interrupted ambush scene.
Nicely done. Let's head upstairs.
This explosion permanently seals the cafe door, which has a few benefits. From a design perspective, we found that when we limit the amount of backtracking players can do, it gives them confidence to venture forward. And from a practical standpoint, we can clean up the now unreachable entities, giving us a big reduction in overhead. It also helps to minimize potential bugs and exploits.
Bring that over here and I'll rejigger it.
Originally, the player didn't get any weapons until the end of this map, so roller mines were the only way to kill the soldiers. As we added more content to previous levels, it became impractical for players to be without a gun for so long. As a result, players get weapons much earlier now.
Gordon, hold up a second. We can't get through here while that sniper's covering the street. Nice toss, Gordon. That sniper almost took my head off. Let me climb up and take a look at what we're walking into. Uh-oh. They've got the street fortified up ahead. Keep on point, okay? I'll cover you from here till we reach the far end. When the coast is clear, I'll catch up. Okay, looks like I can get that ladder down to you. Let me shoot out the latch. I might be a little rusty with this rifle. Ha! Nope, guess I'm not.
One of the primary design goals of Episode 1 was to convey the sense that Alex and the player are a team. This sniper sequence provides an opportunity for Alex to offer combat support in a cool new way. It also gives the player a chance to watch zombies get sniped up close and from various angles.
Players didn't have any weapons in the original version of this map. That made it a lot more important to remove the boards with the gravity gun so that Alex could snipe the zombies. Once weapons were added though, the sky bridge became less of a puzzle and more of a straightforward combat event. We added more zombies to increase the challenge, but pulling the boards off is still the most fun way to get through this section.
Glad that's over. Oh, God. Looks like the reactor's back on track for a meltdown. That transmission's going out after all. Oh! I'd like to find another way around these buildings, but we really don't have time.
Our AI is inherently unscripted, which means that we have to design spaces that permit our characters to make good choices. The AI is better able to make intelligent decisions when there are alternate routes through a combat space. This hallway started out as a straight-shot corridor with a door at the end for soldiers to enter through, but this design didn't provide the AI with enough choices to make the soldier behavior very interesting. Adding an additional space on the side allowed them to find cover and flank the player, both of which dramatically improved the entertainment value of this encounter.
The first prototype of Episode 1's door blast effect was here in the Combine Garrison. Being peppered with chunks of wood while soldiers poured into the room through a haze of smoke proved to be an effective dramatic tool. It was also an excellent way to simultaneously ungate the player and flood the area with enemies. It was so unanimously successful in playtest that we ended up adding it in several places throughout the episode.
think we just broke about 50 Combine regulations. What's that beeping sound? Get away from the doors!
At this point in the action, we really felt that we needed a combat crescendo. Antline guards make great boss challenges, and we decided to add some Combine forces to the mix because watching AI characters fight each other is always entertaining. This setup had a few other benefits as well. Since players had previously only fought alone against the guards, this was the first time they'd actually witnessed secondhand the effects of a guard headbutt. They'd also see an APC in action, and in case there was any doubt, get definite proof that Combine soldiers and Antline guards don't get along, underscoring the collapse of Combine dominance in City 17. At this point in the action, we really felt that we needed a combat crescendo. Antline guards make great boss challenges, and we decided to add some Combine forces to the mix because watching AI characters fight each other is always entertaining. This setup had a few other benefits as well. Since players had previously only fought alone against the guards, this was the first time they'd actually witnessed secondhand the effects of a guard headbutt. They'd also see an APC in action, and in case there was any doubt, get definite proof that Combine soldiers and Antline guards don't get along, underscoring the collapse of Combine dominance in City 17.
Antlion guard arenas have a few specific design requirements. For instance, since the guard is only armed with a melee attack, we can't let the player reach any place that's inaccessible to the guard, such as rooftops and other high perches, that the player can only arrive at after being launched by a guard headbutt. The arenas also need plenty of physics objects for the guard to toss, and at least one unlimited ammo crate, so that the player can't run out of ammunition before killing the guard. For this battle, we also introduced a steady stream of regular antlions to limit the player's ability to constantly circle the antlion guard.
In early versions of this area, there was no side passage off the street, and the gash in the road was created by the gunship that the player later fights in the hospital attic. As development progressed, however, gameplay, story, and performance requirements made this initial design unworkable. The new side passage provided a short break in the combat tension after the boss battle, and also helped us stay within our performance budget.
After the Antlion Guard fight, playtesters were reporting some combat fatigue. We decided to include an environmental puzzle here to break up the pacing before the subsequent street battle. We originally worried that a densely packed room full of hopper mines, trip mines, and explosive barrels was a little too implausible, but playtesters loved the sudden reveal of the room and then enjoyed navigating it, so this ended up being another case where we accepted a trade-off between fun and maintaining a strictly consistent fiction. At one point, this was the site of a physically simulated elevator puzzle. It was kind of neat, but it caused a lot of problems in playtests. Even though the puzzle mostly obeyed the laws of physics, it wasn't all in line with the way we had trained players to expect elevators to work in our world. We considered adding some earlier training to support it, but quickly abandoned the idea in favor of a redesign that was more immediately understandable while still being fun. At one point, this was the site. After they
I thought you might have forgotten about me. Uh-oh. Here we go again. What are you still doing here? Everyone should clear out of the city.
The Combine's not making it easy. We're trying to get enough people together to force our way through to the train station. People are meeting up in a safe house nearby.
Can you take us there?
You bet. Let's go. This way. Hey, it's me. Open the door.
What's the password?
Tell you to shut up.
Come on in.
Sorry, Doc.
Certain protein chains important to...
You're Kleiner's daughter, right?
No. My dad's Odessa Covich. You're right. We don't have time to watch TV.
To think, all I used to want to do is sell insurance.
Let's find another way up. Burn 'em.
This space was designed to lure players onto a section of breakable floor and drops them into a room full of zombies.
Certain protein chain.
You're Kleiner's daughter, right?
You're right. We don't have time to watch TV. Let's find another way up.
Consideration to doing your part for the revival of the species. We must make the most of the time. Secured ourselves. Combine attempt to restore their dominion.
This space was designed to lure players onto a section of breakable floor that drops them into a room full of zombies. Players are enticed into the trap by some reward items and a chance to peek in the hole. We like to surprise players, but we never want them to feel like they've been treated unfairly.
Gordon! Alex? I don't believe it. How the hell did you get out of the Citadel?
We're not exactly
Barney,
sure.
like Dr. Kleiner,
All I know
is one
is
of the
the
characters
Morgonauts
with
had
the deepest
something to do
roots in Half-Life 1.
But what about
His
you,
personality is more iconic and retains more of the comic stylization of the first game. This type of character allows us to mix up the mood a little bit, to inject some absurd humor into the otherwise grim scenarios of the Half-Life universe. While characters such as Alex and Eli Vance have allowed us to explore more realistic dramatic possibilities, we're still very much attached to our roots in satire and black humor.
You guys know about the evacuation trains, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've been planning to make a push on the train station.
Barney's big
Now it
crowbar
looks like we're
scene
gonna have
here
to
required a
cut
few
path
tricks
through
to
every
pull off.
chicken ship Metrocom
There are
who's
actually
having
3
second thoughts
separate
about
crowbar
defending
models in this
City
sequence.
17.
First, there's the one stuck in the machine. When Barney grabs that one, we remove it from the world and switch on a second crowbar that's been in Barney's hand the entire time, only invisible.
Now, come here, look over here.
Both of these models are purely decorative. So as soon as Barney makes his tossing motion, we hide the second crowbar and create a third usable crowbar that then bounces to the ground.
I'll hit the streets and round up everyone who's been waiting. We'll meet you there.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Hey, Gordon, before you go, I was getting tired of carrying this around. Listen, I don't have many more of these, so try not to lose this one, okay?
All I used to want to do is
Go on across, Gordon. She's waiting for you. You lucky dog, you.
It's a gunship.
Go on across, Gordon. She's waiting for you. You lucky dog, you. See you at the station.
It's a gunship. Give me a hand. I hate these things.
Warning. Blood toxin levels detected. Automatic medical systems engaged. Morphine administered. Major fracture detected.
Hey, a hospital. Keep an eye out for medical.
Whenever possible, we like to foreshadow impending boss battles by introducing the enemy before the actual fight. In this case, you know you're going to be seeing that gunship again pretty soon. Instead of letting the gunship AI have its own way here, we force the ship to crash right into the attic. It's a dramatic payoff for winning the battle, and it gives players an opportunity to examine a gunship up close at their leisure.
We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. Players are increasingly open to enemy fire, and the path to the rocket crate becomes more difficult to navigate. As the roof breaks apart, however, the gunship also becomes more visible, and therefore easier to hit, keeping things relatively in balance. The lighting in this area was tuned to play off of the HDR tone mapping effects between the dark inner spaces and the progressively open, bright sky above. We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. Players are increasingly open to enemy fire, and the path to the rocket crate becomes more difficult to navigate. As the roof breaks apart, however, the gunship also becomes more visible, and therefore easier to hit, keeping things relatively in balance. The lighting in this area was... We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. Players are increasingly open to enemy fire, and the path to the rocket crate becomes more difficult. We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. Players are increasingly open to enemy fire, and the path to the rocket crate becomes more difficult to navigate. As the roof breaks apart, however, the gunship also becomes more visible, and therefore easier to hit. We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, we designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward. We designed this gunship battle to create a dynamic, evolving experience, while still keeping the player within a constrained area. Initially, the space appears straightforward and provides plenty of cover. As the environment gets progressively more damaged, combat becomes more challenging. Players are increasingly open to enemy fire, and the path to the rocket crate becomes more difficult to navigate. As the roof breaks apart, however, the gunship also becomes more visible, and therefore easier to hit.
Oh God, not again!
The hospital was a completely new interior space that we had to design pretty much from scratch. Like most of City 17's visuals, it was inspired by Eastern European architecture. The surgery lamps and the overall white and yellow color scheme were drawn from photos of a hospital in Chernobyl. The tilework and the high archways were chosen to give the area the institutional feel of an old European hospital. And the beds were based on some World War II images. In fact, we avoided modern-looking fixtures and furniture altogether in order to differentiate the place from a contemporary hospital.
We designed this area to be an entertaining showcase for NPC combat. Because of our dynamic AI, these kinds of battles never really play out the same way twice. Players often like to sit back, watch the show, and then dive into the fray at their own discretion. We also felt it was time to introduce a new combat ability for Alex, so we gave her a shotgun hint. Not only are shotguns terrific for zombie hunting, their size and ponderous handling characteristics make for some great combat animations.
The door-banging zombies were supposed to give players a safe glimpse of a threat they'd have to face later in the level. In the original design, players couldn't open the door. The zombies would burst through on their own after the player had done a little exploring. We abandoned that plan when many playtesters exhibited a pretty much single-minded fascination with opening the door as soon as they saw it. We made the door openable, though if players ignore it, the zombies will eventually break it down themselves.
To make the set of empty corridors look like a hospital, we chose some iconic hospital props that could be used multiple times throughout the level. Then we built the models with details, multiple skins, and vertical and horizontal elements that would be visually interesting in the space.
After you. I got a bit swamped. I see you did all right without me.
Too much of the same type of uninterrupted gameplay causes fatigue. Through repeated playtests, we learned that by the time players reached this part of the hospital, they were ready for a break from the intense combat. In response to that feedback, we inserted this relatively calm exploration puzzle as a change of pace. It gives players a respite from combat while still presenting them with an interesting challenge.
Levels detected. Lacerations detected. Emergency. User dead. Imminent. Vital signs are dropping.
Here they come.
Too much of the same type of uninterrupted gameplay causes fatigue. Through repeated playtests, we learned
What you're seeing here is a visual representation of a node graph, a set of nodes and all the connections between them. The node graph is used by NPCs to figure out how to move around the world. It's not really a specific set of instructions, but rather a sort of information repository. Among other things, NPCs use the node graph to dynamically chart paths to distant areas, find cover, or scout out firing positions with a clear line of sight to their enemy.
This turret scenario was designed to showcase Alex's ability to provide cover for players in combat. She always hangs back a little, blasting anything that moves. In the original version, players could knock over lightly protected turrets with a single rocket, fired from the safe end of the corridor. We thought it'd be a nice way for players to feel like they'd pulled one over on the Combine. Unfortunately, playtesters routinely thought that they'd discovered a bug, or, at best, an exploit that had arisen through sloppy design. So in this case, a situation we deliberately created to make the players feel clever actually caused them to think we weren't doing our job very well. As a result of this feedback, we added a force field and additional grading to better protect the turrets.
At any rate,
The train station.
first, as a matter...
Oh boy. They're onto us. Better find Barney and get moving.
We wanted players to realize that they've been spotted and the Combine are now aware of their arrival at the train station. It sounds like a simple task, but it actually took a lot of thought to draw the player's attention to the various events that communicate this message. First, a train horn sounds, which gives Alex an opportunity to mention that the station is in sight. Next, the lights go off to grab the player's attention and to make the monitors stand out in the dark. At this point, the player should be looking at one of the monitors, so finally, the Kleiner transmission is interrupted briefly by a Combine advisor. Originally, the advisor appeared on a jumbotron outside, but we were never able to reliably make playtesters look at it. The flashing Combine camera should also provide some indication that trouble is brewing. Though it's not a proper gate, the zombie draped over the exit is designed to slow the player down just long enough for Alex to finish her lines.
Originally, Barney started off in this map in the doorway down by the citizens, but playtesters tended to wander around for a while before stumbling across him. We moved him up here to guarantee that his scene with Alex would unfold before players began any exploration. He's standing over a dead Metro cop because it's a plausible-looking long-term activity, in case players don't move directly down to him. Nearby reward items also tend to draw players toward him.
First group.
Here we go.
Here we wanted to include something a little different, an escort mission. Most of our gameplay involves constant forward motion, so we wanted to design a situation where players would fight through the same basic area multiple times. This temporary backtracking would create a series of encounters where players had a full tactical awareness of their surroundings. Once again, all of this turned out to be more easily said than done, and this sequence went through a lot of iterations. Originally, the train yard was one big space. This approach had a couple of problems. Since players had a constant unbroken view of the entire area, it was virtually impossible to maneuver enemies into position for stage combat events, and because they could always see the goal, players didn't get much of a sense that they were leading citizens somewhere the citizens couldn't get to on their own. Ultimately, we broke the environment into two different spaces, a parking lot and a maintenance building. Because neither area can be seen from the other, we're able to repopulate the spaces with new, more deadly combinations of enemies while the player isn't looking. It also makes the journey feel lengthier and more significant. We wrestled with the problem of plausibly repopulating this area with soldiers between each trip. After several iterations, we decided to have the soldiers jump in through some high windows. This solution has several advantages beyond maintaining incredible fiction. It makes the incoming enemies more immediately visible, and, since the windows are unreachable from the ground, players aren't able to exit through them. Plus, leaping soldiers turn into tumbling ragdolls when shot, which is always entertaining.
Go back and get another group. I'll stay here and guard the gate.
Here we wanted to include something a little different, an escort mission. Most of our gameplay involves constant forward motion, so we wanted to design a situation where players would fight through the same basic area multiple times. This temporary backtracking would create a series of encounters where players had a full tactical awareness of their surroundings. Once again, all of this turned out to be more easily said than done, and this sequence went through a lot of iterations. Originally, the train yard was one big space. This approach had a couple of problems. Since players had a constant unbroken view of the entire area, it was virtually impossible to maneuver enemies into position for stage combat events. And because they could always see the goal, players didn't get much of a sense that they were leading citizens somewhere the citizens couldn't get to on their own. Ultimately, we broke the environment into two different spaces, a parking lot and a maintenance building. Because neither area can be seen from the other, we're able to repopulate the spaces with new, more deadly combinations of enemies while the player isn't looking. It also makes the journey feel lengthier and more significant.
Gotta reload.
That was a close one.
Go get more citizens, Gordon.
Gotta reload.
Fantastic ass kicking, Doc.
Got you covered.
We gotta get out of here. We made it. Thanks to you.
Hurry up, people.
Okay, we're safe. Go for another group.
Get rid of the APC. Now that's the Gordon Freeman I know.
Keep your heads down. I thought we'd never make it. Mm-hmm. We've got you covered.
Thanks, Freeman!
Bring another group of citizens, Gordon.
To the trains, people! We'll make sure you get there safe and sound.
That should keep them off our backs for a while.
You guys coming?
Go on, Barney, they're not after you. Gordon and I will draw their attention while you get the others away from here. We can grab another train once you're clear.
Okay then. But don't take too long about it, yeah?
Here, let's open up this next track.
We needed a train station, but we didn't want something that was too similar to the one in Half-Life 2. We decided to give this station a more industrial look to make it a place where trains were repaired and freight was offloaded. We included some Combine elements to help explain why the Strider camp fires through the various strategic barricades required by the game design.
We separate Alex from the player here to make the Strider battle a more intimate combat experience. While we generally want Alex to be useful to the player, bosses tend to require a specific combat style to beat, and we found that it usually doesn't make gameplay sense to keep her around. Plus, boss battles are the player's big hero moments, and having too much help dilutes a sense of individual accomplishment. Alex more or less sits out all of our boss encounters.
Let's get moving.
For this climactic battle, we created a new AI that makes the Strider a more interesting opponent. It has a snappier cannon attack, can better track the player's movements, and it now has the ability to target the environment in dangerous ways. For instance, its cannon fire can shove heavy shipping containers straight into the player.
This shipping container used to be accessible only after the player destroyed a padlock. Given the amount of stress during this part of the game, even a simple puzzle, in this case, destroying a lock, would be completely missed by the player. In the end, we felt like the arena we had built for the player to fight the Strider was fun enough without this added element, so we removed it.
We often use goodies, such as this crate and the scanner battery around the corner, to guide players along a preset route. We want players to hit their marks during a battle without drawing attention to the fact that they're being subtly manipulated down a particular path.
We
wanted to keep the tension high in this fight, but we also realized that players would need some cover. These destructible panels satisfied both those design goals. Effectively, they're timed shelters. Players can hide behind the panels, but the Strider will target them until they're destroyed. This gives the players brief periods of safety, during which they can plan their next move.
We noticed during playtesting that players were often too afraid of the Strider's weapons to stand in front of it and fire rockets. This was kind of a problem because rockets are virtually the only way to kill a Strider. To help players, we modified the Strider's AI so that a player-launched rocket will significantly delay the Strider's attack. This battle of reflexes lets players guide their missiles in safety as long as they get their shot off before the Strider does.